When people think of deadly volcanoes, they think of Pompeii, a city frozen in ash, or Krakatoa, an explosion so loud it was heard across the planet. But the deadliest volcanic eruption in recorded human history was neither of them. In April 1815, a volcano in Indonesia named Mount Tambora erupted. It killed between 71,000 and 100,000 people. Not all at once, not dramatically, but in waves: fire, starvation, disease, and then it did something no one expected. It changed the climate of the entire planet. The year that followed became known as the Year Without a Summer. This is the story of the deadliest volcanic eruption in human history, and why most of its victims never even saw the volcano. Pompeii, Krakatoa, and why they weren't the deadliest. Pompeii feels like the definition of volcanic horror. A Roman city buried alive, people trapped mid-movement, death frozen in time. Krakatoa feels even bigger. In 1883, it exploded with such force that it ruptured eardrums thousands of kilometers away. Tsunamis swallowed entire coastlines. About 36,000 people died. In 1902, Mount Pelée erupted on the island of Martinique. In minutes, the city of Saint-Pierre vanished. Nearly 29,000 people were killed almost instantly. These eruptions were fast, violent, terrifying, but they weren't the deadliest. Because the deadliest eruption didn't just kill people near the volcano, it killed people who lived on the other side of the world, the mountain that looked harmless. Before 1815, Mount Tambora didn't look dangerous. It stood on the island of Sumbawa, rising more than 4,000 meters high, one of the tallest mountains in the region. Its slopes were fertile. Villages thrived around it. Local kingdoms farmed, traded, and built their lives beneath its shadow. For centuries, Tambora was quiet. No major eruptions, no warning signs that mattered to the people living there. What no one knew was that silence was the danger. Deep underground, magma was accumulating without release. Pressure built year after year, decade after decade. Tambora had become a sealed system, a geological pressure cooker, a bomb waiting for time. The first warnings. No one understood. In 1812, the mountain began to whisper. Low rumbles echoed across the island. Smoke drifted from the summit. Ash lightly dusted nearby villages. But this was the early 19th century. There were no volcano observatories, no seismic instruments, no early warning systems. People living along the Ring of Fire were used to minor eruptions. Tambora's signs didn't feel urgent. Even when explosions were heard hundreds of kilometers away in early April 1815, many believed they were hearing naval cannon fire. No one imagined a single mountain could threaten the entire planet. The night the sky exploded. On the evening of April 10, 1815, Tambora stopped whispering. It detonated. The explosion was heard more than 2,600 kilometers away. A towering column of ash, gas, and fire blasted 43 kilometers into the sky, punching straight into the stratosphere. The sound circled the earth. Villages near the mountain were erased within minutes. Pyroclastic flows, clouds of superheated gas and rock, raced down the slopes faster than any human could run. The night sky turned red, then black. For days, daylight disappeared across parts of Indonesia. By the time the eruption ended, Tambora had lost more than 1,500 meters of its height, collapsing into a massive caldera. Where the mountain caved in after the eruption, emptied it from below. This was the first wave of death. The first wave, fire, ash, and tsunamis. What followed the eruption wasn't chaos, it was obliteration. Tambora didn't just erupt, it collapsed. The mountain tore itself apart, sending vast sections of rock downhill in seconds. From that collapse came the first true killers. Pyroclastic flows, walls of superheated gas, ash, and shattered stone surged outward faster than a human could run, faster than most animals could react. These weren't rivers of lava you could see and avoid. They were invisible until they were already on you. Villages closest to the mountain didn't burn. They vanished. Above them, ash didn't fall gently. It crashed down. The sky went black in the middle of the day. Ash piled onto rooftops, snapping wooden beams under its weight. Homes became traps. People suffocated as they tried to breathe air that was no longer air. Panic spread faster than the eruption itself. Families ran toward the coast, believing water meant escape. But Tambora had one more weapon. As parts of the volcano collapsed into the sea, tsunamis raced outward. Fishing villages along nearby coastlines were torn apart. Boats were smashed, pulled inland, or swallowed whole. This was the first wave of death. Historians estimate that around 11,000 to 12,000 people were killed directly by the eruption, by fire, ash, collapsing land, and water. But surviving this wave did not mean surviving Tambora, because when the explosion stopped, something far deadlier settled in. The second wave, starvation and disease. After the eruption ended, silence fell, and that silence was lethal. Ash smothered farmland across Sumbawa and neighboring islands. Rice fields disappeared beneath thick gray layers. Fruit trees died standing. Soil turned toxic. Water sources were poisoned by ash and sulfur. Livestock collapsed where they stood. Food didn't become scarce. It vanished. In the weeks that followed, hunger spread through entire communities. People weakened. Children stopped growing. The elderly faded first. Malnutrition broke immune systems and disease moved in fast. Diarrhea, respiratory infections, fevers that bodies no longer had the strength to fight. This second wave lasted months, not days, and it killed far more people than the eruption itself. By the time the region stabilized, the total death toll reached between 71,000 and 100,000 people. This is why Tambora remains the deadliest volcanic eruption in recorded human history. But its damage was no longer confined to Indonesia. It was now airborne. The ash that reached the edge of space. Tambora didn't just bury the land, it poisoned the sky. The eruption blasted roughly 160 cubic kilometers of material into the atmosphere, an almost unimaginable volume. Ash, rock, and gas were hurled tens of kilometers upward, punching straight into the stratosphere. There, sulfur dioxide transformed into microscopic sulfate aerosols, tiny particles, invisible to the naked eye, but powerful enough to change how the planet absorbed sunlight. These particles didn't fall back to Earth quickly. They circled the globe. For years, sunlight dimmed, temperatures dropped, weather patterns destabilized. At first, people only noticed strange skies. Sunsets turned deep red and purple. Days felt hazy. The sun looked weaker. Few understood what it meant, but the planet was already shifting. The year without a summer. In 1816, the consequences arrived. Summer failed. Snow fell in June across North America. Frost returned in July and August, killing crops overnight. Farmers watched fields turn black. Harvests collapsed. In Europe, cold and relentless rain destroyed what little survived. Grain rotted before it could be stored. Food prices surged beyond what ordinary people could afford. Bread riots erupted in cities. Families abandoned their homes, moving blindly in search of food. Asia was hit just as hard. Monsoon patterns broke. Some regions flooded. Others dried out completely. Famine spread across China and India. This global collapse became known as the Year Without a Summer, a worldwide climate disaster triggered by a single eruption in Indonesia. Why Tambora was deadlier than any volcano. Pompeii killed quickly. Krakatoa killed loudly. Tambora killed quietly. It didn't just destroy buildings, it destroyed systems, food systems, climate systems, human resilience. Most of Tambora's victims never heard the eruption, never saw ash fall from the sky, never knew a volcano had exploded. They only knew that crops failed, that winters wouldn't end, that hunger spread faster than help. Tambora proved that the deadliest disasters aren't always the ones we witness. They're the ones that unravel the foundations of survival. Could it happen again? Eruptions on Tambora's scale are rare, but they are not impossible. Today, we have satellites, seismic monitoring, early warning systems. We would see the eruption coming, but that doesn't mean we would escape the consequences. Modern civilization depends on fragile networks, global food trade, tightly timed harvests, complex supply chains. A sudden climate disruption wouldn't stay local. It would ripple outward. Tambora reminds us of an uncomfortable truth. Earth doesn't need to destroy humanity. It only needs to interrupt it. The real danger was never the volcano. Pompeii died in a moment. Krakatoa died in a sound. Tambora didn't announce itself like that. It didn't end the world with fire. It ended it with cold, with crops that never grew, with summers that never came, with hunger that moved quietly from village to village, continent to continent. Most of the people Tambora killed never saw the mountain, never heard the eruption, never knew its name. They just woke up to a world that no longer worked. And that's the danger. Because the deadliest disasters aren't always the ones we see. They're the ones that break the systems we depend on. Food, climate, survival. Slowly enough that we don't realize what's happening until it's already everywhere. Tambora didn't destroy civilization. It showed us how easily it can be broken. And the Earth didn't change that day. It simply reminded us who was always in control.